Hello everyone, hope you're all having a good day today, and welcome back to Mothman Media, where we won't judge you for even your most outlandish headcanons. Except for maybe that one. But speaking of audience interpretation, if you've been on the internet for long enough, you've likely at least heard of the term death of the author. And before you ask, no, it doesn't actually mean that the artist or creator was, disconnected from God's Minecraft server. What this term is actually referring to was a literary theory first voiced by French literary critic Roland Barthes, who argued that the traditional method of interpreting a writer's text purely based on what its original creator wanted it to be is stilted and limiting, and that a story's true meaning and interpretation actually lies with its audience instead of its creator. So when a person, yes, a person, creates a piece of art, whether it be a movie, book, show, drawing, etc., they no longer have any authority to definitively tell those who take in that piece of art how they can think about it or interpret it, regardless of the original intentions of the artist, meaning the audience is now free to interpret it as they see it and not as it was meant to be seen. I think this idea is actually really fascinating, so if you don't mind, I'd like to yap about it for a little while. Y'all cool with that? Alright. I've always been fascinated by this concept as soon as I learned about it. The idea that once you put something out there, in a way you no longer have full control over it anymore, and is now subject to the whims and fancies of your audience, I find to be both terrifying and also weirdly comforting at the same time. Scary in a sense is that no matter how much you try to get your point across, there will always be people who disagree with you, which makes my inner people pleaser want to curl up into a sad little ball and weep in the shower. But at the same time, I think it's actually a great thing that art of all kinds can be viewed and digested in different ways. Because let's be real here for a moment. If everybody all had the exact same opinions on the same pieces of art as everyone else, that would be incredibly boring. My dad once had a teacher who told him that any piece of art that draws attention is good, regardless of whether that reaction is praise or, "Good God, throw it in the volcano!" So personally, I choose to fully embrace the idea of death of the author, even if it means that people don't digest my work in the way that I would have wanted them to. I accept that as one of the potential bitter pills of making art. You won't be able to get everyone perfectly on board with what you're doing, but that's okay. In a way, it's a compromise between the creator and the audience, which is something that some creators appear to have embraced.
Is Hunter bi or any other canon sexualities or characters?
Actually, yes, Hunter is bi and Willow is pan, and that's not, again, death of the author, but when we started writing those two...
I'm waiting for the hearts to just start
that's how I always wrote them, that's how I always imagined them in my mind, but since it's not explicitly stated or shown in the show, again, it's just a headcanon, death of the author!
That last clip features Dana Terrace, whom you may recognize from her work on these shows, talking about her personal headcanons while also acknowledging that the audience is also welcome to have their own interpretations of her characters. A very similar opinion to this can also be found in this tweet from Gravity Falls creator Alex Hirsch, basically saying that anything that isn't directly addressed or confirmed in the show is open to fan interpretation regardless of what their own personal headcanons are. However, there are other artists who look at how their art is being consumed and start rattling in their chairs because it's not how they wanted it to be enjoyed or interpreted. Is this frustration valid? Well, let's take a quick look at a few examples. If you've ever been to Chicago, you're probably familiar with this sculpture known as the Bean, but that's not actually what it's called. The actual name of the sculpture is Cloudgate, and people began calling it the Bean just because, just look at it. However, the original artist Anish Kapoor apparently claimed that the popular name for his work was, quote-unquote, completely stupid. Okay, I might have the artistic foresight of a wet napkin at a truck stop bathroom, but if I were to make a sculpture shaped like this, I would not be blindsided by people calling it the Bean and start trying to gatekeep it. But speaking of artists being fully disconnected with the interests of the audience despite the fact that their reaction should have been obvious, insert Tangled the series. If the definition of death of the author is to be broadened a bit, not only can you not definitively tell your audience how to feel about your work, but you also can't tell them what characters in your work you should like and root for, which occasionally leads to stuff like this. As soon as the character of Varian was introduced, he instantly became a fan favorite, which makes sense. He's funny and dorky with a healthy dose of angst, and he's voiced by this guy.
This is not a dream. I am here inside the cream of cheese. is Jeremy Jordan.
It makes sense that he became as beloved as he is. Well, I guess for everybody except for Chris Sonnenberg, who was one of the main showrunners on the series. On multiple occasions, he would straight up tell the audience that they were watching the show wrong by fixating on Varian instead of what he wanted them to pay attention to, which just feels really spiteful and condescending to your audience. Acting like a pretentious a-hole and being a dick to kids online, no wonder he ended up at the Daily Wire. But, on some level, I can understand his frustration. I've had a few times where I've written stories and shared them with people and they've gravitated towards characters that I wasn't planning on them latching onto. But instead of acting sour about it, I took it in stride and accepted it as one of those things that you just can't plan for as a writer. But another thing you can't plan for as a creator is when your fanbase doesn't just have their own idea of what your work means, but they outright rebel against the original creator in defense of their own headcanons, which can lead to... If you've been in the animation airspace recently, you may have heard about the recent drama with Gooseworks and the Amazing Digital Circus. To break it down for you, Gooseworks, the creator of the Amazing Digital Circus, made a statement confirming that the characters of Pomni and Jax are meant to be the main characters of the show. However, after this, fans of other characters rebelled and started harassing and sending threats to her for the heinous crime of talking about her own show. But because she didn't say what some fans wanted, they went full pitchforks and torches mode over basically nothing. Goose ended up deleting her Reddit account and took a step back from social media for a while after this whole ordeal. And let me just unequivocally say for the record, if you're in any fandoms and you do anything like this, you're the worst type of person, and I hope that you only find one slice of bread the next time you go to make a sandwich. This level of fan entitlement is honestly pretty disturbing to see, and unfortunately, it's likely that this won't be the last time that something like this happens. Because I know that this isn't the first time this sort of disagreement has happened. This is an older example, but I think it's still worth mentioning because it's still going on to this day. This being the case of Richard Adams and Watership Down. While the story has been beloved by many over the years, there's one thing that still routinely comes up. Many fans try to imprint a deeper political meaning onto the story, basically putting the story in the same category as a novel like George Orwell's Animal Farm. Even though from the moment he published the novel in 1972 all the way up until basically the day he died in 2016, Adams denied that the story had any intentional political allegories or real-life comparisons. Despite this, even over 50 years since the story was first written, many still claim that this story is basically just a political drama with rabbits. So yes, even in times before the internet, there's always been and probably always will be some sort of disconnect between the creator and the piece of art that they make and its audience. But that's not always a bad thing. Contrary to everything I've been yapping about in the last few minutes, I do actually believe that death of the author isn't fully a bad thing. In fact, I think it can actually enhance a piece of art. Creating something that can create discussion and engagement with its audience can make it much more interesting as a result. As I said before, if a piece of art only has one definitive interpretation, then it just becomes boring. But if a piece of art can be discussed and enjoyed from a multitude of angles, it can be remembered much more fondly. Like most things in life, the concept of death of the author is a team game, and as long as neither the creator or the audience goes too far over the line, I think it's perfectly fine. It's a mostly harmless and even beneficial tool for writers and creators. So in short summary, it's okay to have different opinions and interpretations of art, whether you're producing it or consuming it, just as long as you're not acting like a dick about it. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you'd like to see more content in the future, please consider subscribing. It's free, and I really appreciate it if you'd stick around for even just a little while. But that's all I've got for now. But I hope I'll be seeing you all again real soon.